Welcome back to the second part of our conversation with Moira Welsh.
I think also that the cost of a NORC is way less than the traditional method of warehousing people.
Well, you don't have to build you don't have to construct a whole big home. It's already there. It's pre-existing infrastructure and it's perfect and it has the density of people who are of a certain age. Although a lot of NORCs with supports want to bring in younger people as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a win-win for anyone who's like, if I'm budgeting at a provincial level, I would seriously look at the opportunities that these provide.
I live in the Toronto Seniors Housing buildings, and we're looking at trying to create NORC-like projects in the building. We do have things like somebody does chair yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got ping pong table, and we have regular meetings, and we have a little budget to have coffee every week and things of that nature to create community. Because I think that friendly visitors are important to have that, or a buddy system, so that if you don't see somebody for a few days, I mean, you just look at Gene Hackman. Recently, he passed away, and he wasn't found for many days because nobody was looking in on him and his wife. I think that happens far too frequently when people are by themselves.
I did a story about a year and a half ago, and I followed around a really interesting organization called House Calls. And they're doctors and physiotherapists and occupational therapists and social workers, perhaps, who go to the homes of people who cannot otherwise get to the doctor's office themselves. And while I did that, it was, there was a great relationship between the physicians that I followed and the people in their care. But what I realized was a lot of the people were fairly immobile. And so they were sitting in a chair all day long. And if a home care worker, did not come at night and help them move from their chair to their bed, they would remain there until the home care worker came back. And there was such a loneliness to that existence. And yet, if you wanted to just look at it at a surface level, they were aging in place. But that is not aging in place, not what we envision for aging in place. And so I think we have to be really attentive to that as we move forward, because only a small percentage of people will ever live in long-term care. A lot of people cannot afford retirement homes, so many of us will be aging in our homes. So how do we support people to do that in a way that enables them to live?
Connecting people it happens in many different ways, and one of the ways is to know about things like the third act. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Sure, the third act is a project that the Star began in 2022. And it was the brainchild, so to speak, of the Star's publisher, Jordan Bitov, and conversations that he had. And so it became a partnership between the Toronto Star and the National Institute on Aging at Toronto Metropolitan University. And my part of it is I'm the lead journalist on the third act. It's independent journalism, and I come up with the story ideas. Sometimes I will write about reports that the National Institute on Aging has issued, some of their research projects. But it's enabled me to really dig into some ideas that move far beyond the concept of nursing homes or long-term care and how we will all age, and especially in the community, which really is the focus. And that's where people will age and want to age. And it's enabled me to do some really interesting research on those issues. I've looked at the gender pension gap and older women living with very little income. We've done pieces again on the story about the aging in place, people with house calls and spending so many hours a day in their chair, and a number of different issues around that. And I'm coming up to a podcast, which we will be running in the next number of months on sort of more upbeat ideas around aging, with some good discussions, some very in-depth discussions, but just a lot of different ideas. It is really a concept that enables you to look at the possibilities of what could be. And I find that really interesting.
Yeah, because we have to expand out from the traditional models because it just isn't cost effective. The projected costs are like triple from 2019 in 2050, and that's probably untenable and create a real social challenge for younger people to say, why are we supporting older people? You know, what are these useless feeders doing sitting in their home?
Oh no.
I've heard that phrase. I've heard
Okay.
that phrase, and I think that that's something else that has to change is a paradigm shift in people's attitude towards aging. We all do it, and we are all going to get older. We're all going to pass away at some point, but our life expectancy is actually growing. So how do we get society to look at older people as a resource as opposed to a burden?
Well, it's a really good question. And I think one way is to remind people, for example, the Gen X is turning 60, and the millennials are going to, the first wave of the millennials will turn 50 in 2030, 2031. So everyone is aging. And if you think a demographic is forever young, it creeps up on you. So you are suddenly part of that older age group as well. But nonetheless, I really think that we need to start talking about different ideas and exploring different concepts around growing old. And that is not sad stories in nursing homes, which I have written many of those stories, but talking about the ideas of what can be and what you can do by living well, by staying socially connected, all these different issues that we just spoke about related to the NORCs, being involved, being a vital part of your community.
And things like nutrition and healthcare, staying active. We had one podcast recently where three super seniors were talking about their lives and how it's changed, and certainly their ability to participate in things that they would have done when they were 40, 50, or even 60 has diminished. Their ability to reach high on shelves has diminished, but they are still very active and they still have brains and they still have desires and needs that need to be met in ways that they can accept. You know, we have to be actively engaged in our own care, so that we can live on our own terms in our own homes.
Absolutely, and that's a big piece of it, I think, as well, is staying as fit as you possibly can in whatever way, it meets your needs. I think that's really important because we do want to be as independent as possible, and we also don't want to fall and break a hip, and then suddenly you become fragile. So the stronger you can, keep your muscles and your mobility, the better off we are. And so that's something to be considered. You made me think of sort of a campaign that an organization called Christie Gardens. They are a retirement home in central Toronto, and they're doing something on just what you were speaking about showing that older people are still vibrant human beings. They are themselves. They are who they always were. And they're running ads in newspapers, and I believe they're doing billboards as well. And so that's a really interesting idea. And I think when people start pushing forward with those different kind of concepts, they catch on elsewhere.
So going back to the cost element, much of the things that we cost money for older people happen in the last 6 months of their lives. Nobody knew, say, this is the last 6 months of my lives, I got to start looking at how I'm going to be involved with the healthcare system, because it's going to be really expensive. Nobody does that. So having that preventative opportunities and being supported would be very helpful. We know that food is more expensive. We know that supplements are way expensive. But simple things like exercise, as you mentioned, is really important. And having people look at us as active and socially engaged and contributing is very important. Freedom 55 doesn't mean that you have to go and travel and do the world tour and all that sort of stuff. It means you can volunteer, you can become more engaged in your community and other things that also give back to the group.
Yes, absolutely. Staying connected and involved. And I think the intergenerational piece is what really makes a difference when you're talking about changing the attitudes of younger people. Once people get to know each other, they just understand each other.
Yeah, there's an old phrase, if you can change one life, you change the world. And what people don't understand is that it can be you. If you change your life, you will change the world. So I love the quote from Dr. Thomas, things are not possible until they are possible. And I think that's important for people to understand, is that if we change, then change can be real. I know that there are at least 44 different divisions of the City of Toronto that are tasked with looking at ways of helping older adults. Now, I don't know if any of your ideas or any of the ideas that you're asking, looking at, are being promoted at the city, but they certainly should be.
Well, there are a lot of great ideas out there. You know, and I did a story recently, the National Institute on Aging did a piece on small households for long-term care and how most provinces across Canada, when they're building new, they're building with smaller households of, say, 8 to 10 to 12 people. But one of the ideas that came from some people I spoke with was, why not take small homes, actual houses in the community, similar to the way that people with the developmental community would care for people living in homes, and just have the same kind of model for older adults.
Right, with a central hub for
Yes.
meals and things of that nature.
Yeah, well, the workers would be in the house, and you could have 6 or 7 people. And these were just ideas that were out there. But if the model already exists for people with developmental delays, then why could it not exist for older adults as well? It's obviously a lot of these ideas will help in small incremental ways. So you're not going to be housing 650 people at a time, which is the way that the Ontario government is in part going. But you still enable people to live in their community, so it's a mix.
Okay. Yeah, I know in Alberta, for example, there was a project for people who are in the military to live in tiny houses and share a community in that way. And it was really quite fascinating that the military sees this as an important way to reintegrate people who have served the country back into society and to give them a community of like-minded people to share stories with and feel comfortable.
That's so interesting. Yes, I really think that the small model for living in whatever capacity will really make a difference, and hopefully it will catch on.
Moira, I know that you're writing a new book. What is that about?
I love this book. It's called The Astonishing Lives of Older Women in a World Defined by Money and Men. And it's essentially about the gender pension gap, but it goes so far beyond that. I mean, it's a bit of a financial guide for younger women as well on pensions and work life and the impact of what we call the motherhood penalty when you take time off for maternity leave, and the impact that that has on your career when you return to work, the impact of family responsibilities, most of which are still fall on women for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part. And I also follow the lives of 3 women I write about as narratives, and they're older women who've just had significant financial challenges, but they've also carved out a place for themselves in life. It's a cautionary tale, and it's also very inspiring.
Yeah, I know several people who have left the workplace to be caregivers for their parents, and then when they want to go back in, it's virtually impossible to find work at the same level that they left. So this is also another issue of how do we support the caregivers of older people? It's like $1 billion industry that is unpaid and unrecognized and certainly undervalued because caregivers are not being given any money at all.
It's a huge question, and I think it's a very important one as well, because when you do, I mean, people want to care for their parents, for example. They want to feel good about themselves and that they're helping you, but many of them, and it's often women, will have to take time off of work, as you just mentioned, and some of them have to quit their jobs. While that is an act of love for your family, it will also have a significant impact on your financial status moving forward. Maybe you have enough money and it doesn't matter. For those who do not, who need to work and pay into a pension, they will feel that later on. I remember interviewing a woman who cared for her mother and stepfather and flew across the country to help her father, and I believe she quit her job, or she took a lot of time off work. And she said to me later, well, it was, a very gratifying experience. It has left her with almost no finances at all. And so she wished that she had considered that.
In a previous conversation, you said nothing is perfect. And I agree. But are we getting closer?
Oh, closer to perfection? Well, that's a big question. I would not say that. I think there's so much more room for movement. I think we've made some very significant steps forward. Many of them are incremental. Some of them have great possibilities if the leadership is really behind. And so if I'm talking about long-term care right now, in new legislation that was filed last year, there was discussion on emotion-centered care in homes. And while that's something that people were applauding, that advocates in the industry were applauding, it's really only as good as the leaders within the home and of the organization, because the institutional models are so strong and so entrenched in the training of a great many people that it's so easy to slide back into those old ways. And so it requires really strong leadership at the top to make that a success and a lasting success. So there are a lot of caveats that I would attach to any of this.
Training people to deal with emotion-centered care, is it important to have that type of training provided? And are the underutilized people who are in society, like immigrants and caregivers from other countries, would that be a way to bring them into the healthcare system?
Well, I think for anyone who's coming into the healthcare system, that type of training is really important. And not to be negative, but the training is great. But when you actually get out on the job and you work, if you're being forced to run around on your shift and do all those, checking the boxes, then that training goes away. So you really do need the combination.
So you need advocates at the highest levels to
100%.
beat the drums and say, no, we got to change.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Moira, for sharing all this information. And thanks to the viewers who joined us. This project has been funded by the Government of Canada's New Horizons for Seniors program and supported by Woodgreen Community Centre and its Seniors Advisory Council. Please join us for other episodes of Students of Aging. Like us if you support the work. Your comments will guide us as we develop future projects. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing content every week. If you want to catch more of our adventures, check out the videos right here on our YouTube channel. And remember to leave a comment below. Let us know what you think or what you'd like to see next. We love hearing from you. Catch you in the next one.